Finding the right snack on the carnivore diet can be a strenuous task, and here's why. Our ancient ancestors living in nomadic tribes didn't have much to snack on as they lived their version of the carnivore diet. Well, the modern day version of the carnivore diet isn't much different. Snacking is a very new concept in human history. The first written use of snack as a noun dates back to the late 18th century. A few decades later, people in Europe and the Americas were using snack as a verb to refer to eating a little bit of something to get them through a few hours. A few decades after that, we see the advent of massive industrialized food manufacturers using the word snack to flood American homes with hydrogenated, low-fat, shelf-stabled, over-sweetened garbage. Those veteran carnivore eaters already understand why snacks in the diet don't really mix. It's the only diet in the world where you're told to eat as much as possible until you feel completely full. And no, you cannot and will not get fat. There's no question as to why snacks aren't popular in this discussion. There's really not much of a need for them because you feel full and stay full after every meal. But what about the times when you have an 8-hour car ride ahead of you or a busy work shift with no lunch break? I'm here to show you my favorite carnivore snack with step-by-step instructions and tips and tricks so you'll have your quote snack in busy times. Check it out. Most of the best chefs and websites out there will direct you to purchase the most expensive and extra fatty cuts of beef. I'm here to tell you we won't be doing that. We're just trying to make a snack, so there's no need to burn holes in your wallet. Additionally, we want a very lean piece of meat because fat can turn rancid faster than the protein in the meat. When I make my snack roast beef, I want it to last for a few days, so here's a list of cheap, lean cuts of beef I use. There's top round, eye of round, and bottom round. The cut of meat we'll be using is a 3¼ pound bottom round roast. It's cheap, it's lean, and it'll get the job done. In this video, I'm going to share with you a very untraditional cooking ingredient to bring out some flavor in your homemade roast beef. Most people will find this bizarre, as did my friends, but it's 100% carnivore and bakes in really well during the roasting process. I encourage you to give your roast beef a hefty coat of butter powder mixed with salt. To be exact, mix 1/3 of butter powder and 1 tablespoon of salt in a large mixing bowl. Place your roast in the bowl, rotate it on all sides, making sure not to miss a spot. The entire chunk of meat should be blanketed in that white powdery butter. Next, take your salt and sprinkle a little more on each edge, making sure to pat it down with your hand. Now at this point, you may keep your meat in the mixing bowl or transfer it to a plate or wire rack because we're going to wrap it and let it sit for a couple hours, or even better, overnight. During this time, the salt and butter mixture is going to create a cohesive, gluey structure around the entire steak, allowing more juices to stay locked in during roasting. After you let the meat rest in the fridge, take it out and let it come up to room temperature for about 30 minutes or so. While this is happening, you may preheat your oven to 225 degrees Fahrenheit. If you have yourself a newer fancy oven, use the convection button. If your oven only has a bake mode, no worries, because we can create a convection flow of air using this trick. Place the roast beef on the middle rack and a pan on the rack directly below to create a flow of air. This pan will also allow you to catch grease that drips out your meat, preventing a huge smoky mess on the floor of your oven. A super useful and cheap tool to have during any roasting process is a meat thermometer with an extended probe. This will prevent you from repeatedly opening and shutting the door to check on the temperature. With the roast in the oven and the probe inserted into the centermost part, all we have to do now is wait for an internal temp of 125 degrees. This would be considered medium rare by most standards. The less time spent cooking, the more flavor we save from dripping out into the pan below. This 3¼ pound roast was finished in 2 hours and 10 minutes exactly. So if you don't have a roasting thermometer, no worries. Just reference the cooking time I used and you will not overcook your meat. Now some of you may be wondering why I didn't sear the roast before putting it in the oven. Many of you have seen family or friends make this common mistake time and time again. Ready? Here's a way to take your cooking IQ from 90 to 100. Let it be known that searing does not lock in the juices. I see this myth repeated over and over. This has been conclusively proven false many times, but on the other hand, searing does improve flavor by catalyzing the Maillard-Browning reactions, a series of chemical reactions that rapidly take place when proteins and sugars are heated to around 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Preheat your cast iron or stainless steel skillet to a medium-high heat. Then use a pair of tongs and sear all surface areas of your lopsided cut of beef. This part may be a bit tricky because of the weight and shape of your meat. Do your best to cling onto the tongs as tight as possible, rotating every 45 seconds or so. Now this is the most important part in the entire video, and I tell you this from a position of personal stupidity because I did not listen to my own advice. Once you're done searing, let your roast rest for several hours before even daring to cut into it. In the final step, I used an electric meat slicer, which I know most of you probably don't have. This really just saves a ton of time and makes the process a bit more foolproof. To do this without a meat slicer, all you need is a cutting board, a sharp knife, and a lot of patience. Even the most inexperienced chef can get a clean, thin cut about 3/4 of the time. Any slice that doesn't come out nice and thin like they do in the supermarket, just save them in a container and fry them up with some eggs later on. I want to remind all those new to the carnivore diet to keep up your fat intake, so I strongly discourage relying only on roast beef as your primary food source. If all you have to eat is roast beef, fry it up in a pan with some beef tallow and egg yolks. Once you get your mountain of roast beef piled high, you may start your snack customization. Depending on which tier of the carnivore diet you're on, you can roll these up with cheese or even other cold cuts like pepperoni. Wrap them individually for maximum freshness, or throw them in a bag altogether if you know you'll be eating them soon. My best advice when it comes to freshness is that they'll stay good for 2 to 3 days. So that's pretty much it for this recipe. Season your meat, bake it, then slice it. If you want to see more carnivore snack videos, please like and subscribe. I'd also love to hear feedback from the carnivore community, so drop a comment below if you have any questions. And as always, eat, meat, repeat. See you later, everybody.